Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to finish up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from Andrew. It says Nile, Iskander D'hul Karnon. So that's what we're going to check out. I don't think I know much about this band, so we're just going to dive in and see where they take us today. This is exciting. Not what I was expecting given our opening instruments. Yeah, that's a really fun walk down. Our phrasing is all over the place. Dude, those really tight snare rolls. Yeah, it's so strange. Working on 8-beat phrases. And then it's 12. This is what happened at the beginning. The phrasing's all over the place. I like the harmony on that guitar line. Yeah, so in that previous section, our phrase is 4446. Gonna tease me with this again? Okay. A lot of silence? It's over. I can't do that. Now it's over. I gotta make sure. Some bands put stuff in the last few seconds, and like, what if I didn't hear that? Is it gonna affect the analysis much? No, but it's gonna eat away at me. What if something was in those last 4 seconds? So I have to listen. I have to finish it out every time. So, first of all, man, I gotta talk about the opening and the outro. The outro is okay because it allowed the song to wind down. It's interesting that they chose to do it in that style, but given our intro, it almost feels like it bookends our story. Maybe there's something in the narrative that fits both of these, right? They open something up and they get blasted with this metal and they find a way to close these doors and put the metal back to rest. Whatever the metal represents, right? So there's definitely a narrative thing that could happen with this framing. But the intro certainly led me into believe that this was going to be music that it was not, which kind of disappointed me a little bit. I got over it, but yeah, having that really nice tuba work there at the beginning and all of the voices that we heard, um, and the ideas that were present, and I was like, okay, we're getting in for some symphonic adjacent stuff, right? Maybe it's symphonic metal, maybe it's just metal with some strings and some brass, not necessarily symphonic metal as a genre proper, but definitely something more than just a metal band, and that didn't happen. And I don't want to hold that against the song too much because that's literally something that's a confusion that only occurs on a first listen, right? And I'm listening to this out of context of the full album, so like there's a lot of things that are working against me in this case that I just want to chalk up to the experience of reacting to a track with no information, an isolated track, rather than have it stand as a detractor of the song itself. But I did want to point out that it made me it led me with some expectations that it did not follow through on. Now, funny enough, there was a second bit of promises made that weren't followed through on as well. It was our second section, which reminded me a lot of Archspire. Very technical, very fast, very precise, and utilizing keys that are not typical. Well, I shouldn't say keys, modes that aren't typical for metal. right? It was a very flashy, intricate, sonically interesting. The notes they used, the relationships, the fact that we had so much stuff out of key that I really found it difficult to figure out what key we were in at all. That really quick run up and down was very different than that descending idea we had after it, as far as note combinations. Um, so it was almost technically it's probably working with one key and pulling in accidentals, but it almost felt like we were shifting between two different keys. Every 4 bars, shifting it up. Very interesting concepts. Then we also have that really interesting rhythmic thing where we have those 16th note run up and down, and then on the descending section, I mentioned there's a fun rhythm to it. I think I even called it fun during the reaction. And we had the accent on downbeat of 1, and then the and of 2, and then 4, and then 1 again, I think is what it was. It was syncopated. It wasn't just quarter notes coming down. So we had really interesting harmonic ideas. We had really interesting rhythmic ideas. And it was all played very fast and technically proficient, very clean. I was like, okay, I can get into this too. And we abandoned that as well. So, sweep me off my feet twice. I don't really have a good rhyme for this. I was gonna try to do something about like fool me once, shame on you kind of thing, but like having the rug pulled out from under me and like it happened twice, but it won't happen a third. I don't know. I'm not good at this kind of stuff. Make up your own thing and put it in the comments, and I'll use it next time. But I really like this section. The drumming was super intricate, and we'll have to touch on the drumming just as a whole because the drummer is a beast. There's some gnarly drumming in here. But we shift out of this into just kind of straight thrash metal for a little bit. And then we move out of that into this slower groove metal, which I really enjoyed. We got to hear a bit more of the melodic element. The drums slowed down a little bit and kind of entered into this groovy syncopation idea rather than just the static, rigid, 30-second notes or whatever. The drummer is just on fire, man. 30-second notes. It might have been 16th, depending on the tempo that they composed it out. It's just fast, though, right? And we take this block of 4, right? The proggy atonal odd rhythmic idea, the actually I guess it's 3, the thrashy section and the groovy section, and we just kind of cycle that through a couple of times. We have a guitar solo section, and then we bring back one. I think we bring back the technical prog stuff, and then we do our outro. So yeah, um, like I said at the beginning, there's that first time going in with no information thing where you try to get a read on everything, and they're changing themselves up every other section, and I'm like, oh, I enjoy this. Oh, they're not going to do that. I enjoy this. Oh, they're not going to do that either. Well, this is kind of neat. It's fine. Oh, the groovy section's nice. And so I don't ever know what's really happening. But like I said, this is more of a first time listen thing, right? Every other time I listen to this, I'm going to know what I'm in store for, and I would like to look at it from that angle. So instead of this being deceived, which is certainly how it felt on a couple of these sections that they didn't follow through on, I like to look at it from the other angle, which is utilizing a variety of sounds to keep the song fresh, which I think is an interesting thing to go about on. The highly technical stuff is interesting for me in isolated pockets of music. I can listen to the entire Archspire. I almost blanked out on the name. I can listen to the entire Archspire album with no issues, But that's not true for every tech death band. A lot of tech death is just completely overwhelming for me. There's something about the way they compose music that works for me. Even on their songs that are straight tech death all the time, because they do have these classical guitar interludes in a couple of tracks. But I'm like, even excluding those, there's something about their composition that just works for my ears. I don't get fatigued by it. And the same thing goes for thrash. Thrash is just a lot of a lot, and it can wear me down really quickly. So for me, I think it's really neat that I can listen to this and we start at like this massive intensity and we bring it down a little bit, and bring it down a little bit, and bring it down a little bit until we have this nice groove metal. And then we bring it back up. And it gives me time to recenter and uh, become ready to brace myself for the breakneck, faster technical stuff. Um, it also gives me a section that I love groove metal. I do. This is something I've talked about a lot in the past. Is that if you're gonna give me something that's like super aggressive, it needs to have a real strong groove to it. It's why a lot of just straight metal bounces off of me. I like the sound of it, but there's got to be another aspect to just that, that rule of cool metal writing. And groove is usually something that's going to hook me in a bit. And so it presents me something that I can latch onto and recharge and get ready for that super technical stuff. So it allows them to show off in a lot of aspects while also giving the listener moments of rest, a moment to catch their breath from the more intricate elements, while also simultaneously keeping the song fresh. Like I said, you never really with any section too long to where it's going to wear down on you and overstay its welcome. By the time you're getting tired of something, if you're even getting tired of something, they've moved on to something else. And this brings me to an interesting concept because not only do we have variety in overall sound, speed and intensity, but we have variety in sonic quality as well. Our opening idea, and our outro idea utilize chords that aren't present anywhere else in the track. Then we also have a bit of that spicy back and forth in our chaotic technical section where the chords, like I said, I can't ever really place them because there's so many accidentals being utilized that muddies up the overall intent, the emotion of the sound, that I can't really put my finger down on what type of chord it is, or what type of key we're in, what the chord progression is. So it kind of has its own identity as well. And then as we get into the middle ground and then the groovy metal section, those tend to move into the more typical pentatonic sound that metal uses. And we get these just really nice, easier to listen to, easier to understand harmonic ideas. So there's a lot of variety there as well. So this song is just variety all over the place, and I think that's very neat. Now, I mentioned earlier we got to talk about the drummer, and this dude is just I don't know, man. This drummer killed it throughout. Like there's the concept of endurance and sheer strength to do all of this for the elongated time of a show or even just the recording. If they're not a live band, they still have to record this. um but then it's even the pocket ideas, right? The creativity, the ingenuity of the drummer themselves, because anybody can learn how to do blast beats. Anybody can learn how to do 30-second notes on double bass kicks, right? Or on a single bass. Is it possible to do 30-second notes on a single bass? I'm sure there's a technique for it. I'm sure somebody's built up the muscle and endurance for it. I just always say double bass kicks because that's what I assume the average person is going to use. If you're playing that fast, it just makes sense to have two limbs. It's the same reason that we don't do single-handed 30-second note rolls on a snare or something. You know, two hands split the workload. Anyways, though, it's not just learning to do that. Anybody can build up to that, but there's a creativity that sets a drummer apart. And that creativity is on full display here in those transition sections that come after our groovy metal sections. And this drummer just kills it. All these little pocket, like, 4 30-second note snare rolls, all right, in between, like, all these cymbal hits and this, like, quick fill down the tom line. And it's just, I need to see this. I really do, because this is just kind of blowing my mind. I really hope there's a drum cam of this. Well, there's a drum cover by a... That dude looks young. Filmed live with a Nokia Lumia 1020 in 2014. Well, I hope there's a... That looks like it is the only footage of this dude tearing it up. George Colias. I might just have to look up his drum stuff anyways, just even if it's not this track. He apparently seems to be a very skilled dude. But yeah, just like the blast beat section, the double bass kick section, like I said, all the endurance and strength training that goes into that, it's impressive. But to me, what really makes him stand out is his melodic writing that he chooses to do while the guitars are shredding and playing all their stuff. And he doesn't necessarily decide to keep time. There is a rhythmic flow to the way that he writes these melodic drum sets or drum parts, but it is not designed specifically in mind to keep the time. It is all about basically a drum solo while the guitars are doing their riff, which might as well be solo-y on top of it. It is also shreddy. And it is just a phenomenal moment of this dual mind, dual melody approach, bringing the guitars and drum together to kind of write a duet. It's just gorgeous. It blows me away every time. And I think they were all slightly different. They all had a general flow to them, but the embellishments were changed on all three occasions that we went through this part. So it was just phenomenal. Um, the bass I could barely hear. There wasn't real. There was a second guitar, but it pretty much doubled up on the first guitar for a lot of this track. And the vocals were, for me, forgettable. And that's probably just because the drums and guitar, the harmonic stuff, and neat rhythmic stuff are taking all of my attention. I had very little stuff to pay to, very little attention to pay towards the vocals. It's not to say they're bad, they're just not really my cup of tea and not as interesting as anything else that the band was doing, unfortunately. Um, well, maybe not necessarily unfortunately, because sometimes when you have so much going on, somebody just needs to do the simple stuff, right? And I think that's what the vocalist got here, was to just be that texture that got added to the track. And that's something interesting too that I hadn't thought I was going to talk about, but the the production of this and the textures of everything. This is a very clear and clean production. There is grit in the guitars, there's compression on the drums, there is that natural compression in our growls, but it is all very clean. We had that one moment um, early on, and basically everything cut out to silence for the rest of the bar. So it's probably got like 2.5 beats of silence. And when the drums stopped, there was a little bit of a tail on that, and then it was quiet. And when the guitar stopped playing, there was pretty much no tail on that. I don't know if they muted it or if they just have a really aggressive cutoff on their pedals and whatever. But yeah, just there is basically no fade out on anything in here, which really allows these notes to come to a stop abruptly, which makes the faster playing extremely crisp. It's very clear to me, at least, that the production and the guitar tone and everything in here is designed and handled in a way to allow maximum clarity for the faster sections, and it just happens to really work well for the groovier sections as well, because the cutoff is only when you stop playing a note, and for those sections the guitars just strum out, a chord or whatever, and let it suspend for a bit and hang in the air, and there's no cutoff there. The note's still being played technically. So yeah, it works in both situations and just provides a very, very clear production that allows everything to be heard except the bass. And maybe that's on me. I don't know. I think my ears are going. Bass is already hard for me to hear, but I feel like I'm hearing it less and less as the days go on. It really has to be put front and center in a production for me to hear it. I am curious, when did this come out though? Oh nine. A lot, well, I was going to say a lot later than I expected, but the production tells me it's a bit newer. The composition tells me it's a bit older though, or is at least inspired, by older metal. I'm going to read some lyrics here, see what's going on. I don't really have much of a read on theme or story that the music's telling me. It's just a series of really cool sounding guitar work and drum work. And the title, maybe I'll get that translated while I'm reading the lyrics and see if that helps any at all. All right, catch you in a second. This one's a bit above my pay grade. I'm not quite sure. Here's the thing. When it comes to some mythologies, they can kind of bleed over into fantastical. In fact, a lot of mythologies bleed over into the fantastical. And it makes it really difficult, especially for mythologies based in other languages, to know if they're speaking about, how should we, proper mythologies, ones tied to practiced religions or spiritual concepts, or if it's completely fiction from the get-go, something like Lord of the Rings, designed with fiction in mind. A lot of this reads like pure fiction to me, but it brings in the concepts of, well, it name drops Muhammad and speaks directly of the Mecca. Well, just Mecca, not the Mecca. That's weird. Um, and a prophet who was revealed in the cave at Mecca, which from what I understand is Muhammad. That was one of his things. He had to like cut through a cave with like it was spider webbing all over it. He had to cut through that and get inside, even though there's I don't know. I'm really rusty on my Muslim. No. What is that? I just made a fool of myself. What is that religion called? I don't know. Anyways, I'm really rusty on the religion. Um, but like, so there's these allusions to Muhammad, but then there's like, it talks about the nations of Gog and Magog with this person named Iskander who conquered both the rising and the setting of the sun. And then there's a day of judgment at the end, and the hosts of Gog and Magog, there'll be fierce creatures unchained from there, and they'll go forth to ravage the earth. And like this kind of has like a Judeo-Christian, Muslim kind of feel to it, end of time style, but I don't know. There's a lot of stuff in here that goes over my head because I'm not brushed up on whatever this is, whether it is an actual religion or a fictional mythos. But that's what it seems to be about, is the judgment day at the end of times. And there's disbelievers about who this Alexander person is. And those disbelievers will be, well, it says hell will be unleashed upon them. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going way over my head. Uh, if you have any insight into this, lyrically or musically, of course, I'm always down to hear other perspectives or interpretations of what the music is doing, or if it has any relationships to the lyrics and their themes or anything like that. Please let me know any of that in the comments, because these are my thoughts, and at least comparing the music to the lyrics, I'm at a huge loss, because the lyrics are just, I don't have a read on them at all. When you're done commenting, you're gonna head up into the description box, and in there is a link for Linktree. Takes you to this menu right here. It has links for everything related to the channel. You can find my music. You can find links to the Discord server. You can find ways to support the channel and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. That wraps it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow. We're going to check out a track from Turnstile's latest album to pair with today's earlier Turnstile reaction. We'll compare and contrast that, and we'll also check out a special selection. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.